And I believe we are live. At least one of us is live. JR is somewhere on his way. He is such a nice guy. He's transporting everybody around Pennsylvania. I really appreciate that. All you should. He should be joining us in about 10 minutes. He apologizes for being late, but again, he's serving the greater good. We were going to do a bunch of topics tonight. By the way, not legal advice. Like, subscribe, share. I'm going to vamp for about 10 minutes to let JR catch up. But before we get started, of course, I wanted to make sure that, again, JR and I are just two guys, not securities lawyers. We are just offering opinions and do your own, all that nonsense. Do your own research. Don't rely upon anything we say. We're not experts in the field. We're just giving you our opinions. Of course, tonight we're going to be talking about MMAT. That was news that broke today. Of course, finger motion we're going to discuss, MMTLP. We were going to discuss the new SEC regs. We'll have to see if we're going to do that tonight or we'll split it up and do it another night this week. But we shall see. Of course, I want to address the monkey in the room. No, the elephant in the room. I wanted to address the elephant in the room. I got tons of calls last week from all kinds of people asking me to address their favorite cartoon Bananna. And so I'm going to address that first. I was really stunned by the question, to be honest. But obviously, and to some of you, this may be before your time, but obviously the answer is the Banana Splits. That was the favorite group of Banana cartoon characters. And I believe my favorite, and I'm sure it's yours also, was Fleagle. You remember Fleagle? He was my favorite cartoon Banana character. So again, I thank all of you out there for requesting that topic, and I look forward to what you want to hear next week. So moving on to three important things, again, as we wait for JR to join in. I met a criminal last week with a bounty on his head. It's pretty weird putting paper towels there, don't you think? Don't you think? RIP, rest in peace, boiling water. You will be missed, with a T. And why did the monk refuse Novocaine when he had his tooth extracted? Because he was trying to transcend dental medication, of course. Anyway, so but I saw the news on. I'm going right to MMTLP since that's the. Excuse me, I'm going to MMAT. And let me back up a second. So usually JR and I speak about stuff before we go on the air. As it turned out, this week I was out of town up until about 90 minutes ago or so. And I didn't see the text that he had sent me earlier in the day about MMAT. So when I got back to Southern California, I looked at the press release and kind of then drew some conclusions. Okay, so let me preface this by, and it's going to be interesting. So I'm going to start talking, and when JR comes in, he's probably not going to have heard any of this, and I'm going to ask him to give his opinion, and we could see how they might differ. So I saw the news that let's use the correct terminology so I don't misstate it. So it says that MMAT named Jim Fusaro as the new CEO effective immediately. And this is going to be kind of interesting. So I want you to kind of listen to something that's going to come out of this PR. And I looked back, by the way, I looked up Fusaro's background in the limited time I had without speaking to JR. And he looks like a very qualified guy, in my opinion. So that I had no problem with in particular, but I did have the problem that Palikaras was forced out. And my bigger concern, well, I'm not going to say my bigger concern. I'm going to say another concern because it may not be my biggest concern. Another concern I had, and I don't know, again, if this is truthful or accurate. When I read the press release, it said he was removed October 10th. So and again, maybe perhaps in this press release, I think I got this out of some media outlet, but it's citing an article by Stephen Necrosis, and it's dated October 16th, 2023 at 6 p.m. So I was a little stunned by that. How would why would so this is what I'm stunned by. And I don't know, again, if this is important, if it's meaningful, or anything along those lines. But what struck me was, if they knew about it on the 10th, why didn't they disclose that to the 16th? Because I would think that the termination of Palikaras, we got JR, I believe, is joining us now. I think. Sort of JR. It's nearly JR. I see a name.
Richard, can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Yeah, I've been having difficulty with my camera all day.
All right. Well, we can play. You could pretend to be Ham today.
No, I don't think so. As much as I like Ham, no.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, I don't know what's going on, but I just want to, for the record, why on earth would you think that you would go live and I wouldn't be listening to you in the car on the way home, because I figured you'd be talking smack about me.
I don't think I did. I'm not really.
Let me see if I can do this on my phone, Richard, because my camera is not going to work at all. So
I think your picture is perfect, by the way, but that's okay.
Well, it gave up on me in the middle of a Zoom today. We were on a Zoom with a congressional office, and it literally just stopped working.
That's very sad.
I know.
Did you get to hear the 3 jokes, by the way?
I did. I did.
Okay. Just one. And was Flegel your favorite banana split?
You know, I didn't. I think that was before my time.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think so.
I doubt it. I think you were probably
I'm going to switch to my phone, Richard. I'm going to switch to my phone.
Why don't you go ahead and switch to your phone?
I'm going to.
All right. Good idea. All right. So, JR's. I think you understand that JR might be switching to his phone. We tried to keep that private, but I think it might have come through. Oh, there's JR.
There I am.
There's JR. I think he just switched to his phone. So you heard my like MMAT kind of stuff, and we haven't talked about this at all. Zero. And I have not, I don't know, as I prefaced, I know nothing other than when I saw in the press release. And I'm gonna, since JR's now on the line, we had a discussion, right? Didn't we discuss? In terms of a conflict, right?
Yeah, it's been a while since we talked.
Well, I'm going to remind you. I'm going to refresh your recollection. We talked about whether we were just shooting, because this is what we do a lot. So if something comes up that's a legal issue, we'll toss it around. And we're just kind of arguing about it and just kind of seeing where it goes. So there was a recent discussion where we talked about whether Wes could represent Nexbridge and MMAT.
Yes.
And this is like 2 days ago, by the way, or 3 days ago. Yeah, you should be very.
We talked about so many conflicts. Who knows?
I know. But we talked about that conflict, and one of the issues, and it's not like we knew anything or know anything. So I'm not directly suggesting anything. It's just something we occurred, and I said that there was the Wills notice that were outstanding as to Palikaras. So what happens if there was some issue about an indictment against Palikaras?
Right.
Then would that create a potential conflict in West representing Nexbridge? so it really didn't have anything to do with Palikaras resigning as the CEO. It was just, we were just talking out whether Wes could represent that. And, but to, you know, there's been moments, just to let you know, there have been moments in the past where I didn't like MMAT's lack of being super upfront about things.
Right.
And that was discussed also. Wasn't enough to do anything about, wasn't enough to create a hubbub, but it was noted. And so now I'm going to take you up to the current time. So like I said, I checked out the guy who's the new CEO. He looked very qualified. Uh-oh.
No,
He looked very qualified. But what concerned me, and I don't know if you heard this part, was the press release says that Palikaras was canned on the 10th. And today's the 16th. So here's so let me play this out. What if that is true, not being a securities lawyer, not knowing diddly squat, but let's say that was true. Let's say Palikaras was ousted on the 10th. And at that point in time, MMAT was aware of the fact that Palikaras was ousted on the 10th. And they probably were aware of the fact that that might be a material event, right? That's probably an event that shareholders might want to know about. And there's probably people that bought stock after the 10th. So to be honest, that pissed me off. And because I thought that was not transparent, and there may be some reason, but you know, companies are like anxious when any material event happens, they come out quickly just to cover their butt, and they produce some kind of filing just to disclose it, so they can't have this conversation that we're having now.
Right.
Because I don't know the logic or the strategy or why they did or did not wait a week. But again, if I was somebody who bought stock after the 10th, I would be pissed. And I'm going to be upfront also. After I read that particular fact, that was this afternoon, so it might have been like 4:40, something. It was late in the day, 4:40 being Pacific time. So the aftermarket closed 20 minutes after that. I sold all but one of my MMAT shares because of that fact. I thought that was, and again, I'm sure there might be some explanation. And I figured also, if I want to buy back in, I could buy back in at some point. That's fine. But that concerned me. Not that if in fact there is a gap in time, that's not right.
Right. Yeah, I will tell you, I didn't read. I saw it on my way out the door, so I didn't read anything. I talked to one individual about it for maybe 30 seconds. First off, in full disclosure, I do not own MMAT. I know about this much about the company, and that information was all gleaned after the U3 halt. So I really have I have no opinion on whether this is good, bad. I'm indifferent to it. I don't know Mr. Palikaras. I've never talked to Mr. Palikaras, and I know very little. You know, like I said, about the company. I know they're involved in some you know, what I've seen, some amazing technology, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah. Again, just so from my perspective, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know whether it's bad ultimately for MMAT. It may be the guy that took over might be a superstar.
Right.
That really wasn't the issue for me. The issue was the language that Palikaras was basically canned. And if in fact there's a gap in time, I don't see the justification of that. And that would concern me. And
yeah, I agree. I agree. That seems a little off. And that's usually not what we see. You know, we see, you know, CEOs or executives cut loose, PR come out immediately, 8K filing. So that one, you're right. I don't know what to make about it.
Now, the flip side of that is, of course, if the presentation in the media is not accurate, then it may not apply. And I think we've had a little of experience, you and I, and ongoing, that, you know, there's a lot of sources of information I'm not going to call them media, but they're sources of information that a lot of times just aren't accurate and may be motivated by things that we wouldn't like them to be motivated by. So
Right. No,
I'm just
I
basing
agree.
on, yeah, I'm just basing on the limited amount of time I had. And the only other reason is because, and you know, JR and I haven't talked about this at all, but the other thing that occurred to me, is there any linkage between therefore MMAT and MMTLP?
Right.
And if and I don't know why Palikaras, you know, we're so pure speculation, pure speculation. So what reasons could you think of that somebody might immediately be canned? You know, and I'll start and you could add or subtract. You know, somebody could just not be doing a great job and the board could just say, you know, out. And that could be a reason. Somebody could be involved in some type of investigation that might compromise the company and they just don't want the CEO to be involved. The company might have found out information about the CEO that made him uncomfortable to continue. Maybe the CEO himself didn't want to continue for other reasons. There could be a myriad of reasons, and I don't think it really makes, if you know, as long as it wasn't something regarding illegality, I don't think it makes a difference in the grand scheme of things. Again, if you replace that person with somebody more qualified, what concerns me is that he was immediately dumped. So so you know, you could structure an exit, you know, gracefully, absent some, you know, some circumstance. So I would think like a company like MMAT wouldn't can the guy if they could. They'd say, you know, okay, you're going to leave in 2 months. They'd put out a PR. They'd say, you know, he's decided to leave. We're hiring this new guy. I don't think they would believe that an abrupt departure would look good on the company.
So, you know, having some experience with this, I mean, I spent almost 20 years in HR. And one thing I can tell you for certain is there's always a reason for an abrupt departure. When an individual is let go immediately, uh, you know something's going on. I will tell you the thing about this one that seems off to me is that he was let go on the 10th. And my understanding from a conversation is he still, on some level, has his hands in the company. So, you know, I don't know what to make of this. And I've been involved in these types of terminations. And again, when you're abruptly let go, you typically don't have a hand in the pot. You're done. It's over. Here's your severance package. You know, go talk to J.R. Hewing. He'll explain the benefits and what's going to happen during your severance period. Uh, so this one's a little different. I don't know if it's positive or negative or something in between. I just don't know.
And I'm going to throw this, yeah, I'm
Go
going to
ahead.
throw this one out because we talked about it. You know, so you know, could it relate to the Wells notice? Could it? It possibly could. We don't know. We don't have any. We don't have any reason either way.
Right.
But it's something that we've discussed, and we thought, you know, it certainly could be a factor, and it could be maybe he needs the time away to deal with that. Maybe he has no culpability about anything, and he just needs the time away. All that stuff we don't know. I don't know if we're going to know.
Right.
You know, but but again, the fact of an abrupt departure, one, is concerning. And if in fact what I read the 10th versus, you know, if it was today, I'd have, you know, that wouldn't be a concern. If in fact they issued a PR and they said, we let him go today, we have a replacement, I wouldn't like the abrupt departure, but I wouldn't feel like they were trying to not be transparent or timely.
Well, I will say this: if they were trying to downplay it or trying to spin it, you would have saw more of an in-depth PR. You would have saw more spin.
I'm
There
not
wasn't
sure.
any of that.
I'm not sure. I'm saying, and again, pure speculation, absolute 100% speculation. But if it relates to some ongoing investigation and their counsel would tell them to shut up.
Well,
Their
now,
counsel.
somebody just made a really good point. Traveling session. He's still a majority shareholder. He would have some say in him leaving. I would tend to agree with that. There would have, but that, I guess that's where I'm confused. If you have some say in how you're leaving, you're still a majority shareholder. Again, where was the spin?
Yeah, I mean, maybe he agreed. Well, I mean, you're correct. So maybe he agreed. Let's say there's a board, 7-person board. They said, we want to get rid of you. He says, well, I'm the majority shareholder, and they say, well, we want to remove you. And I'll say, okay, I'll agree to the removal. So, and technically he would have the right, but if the board's against him, and again, we don't know any of this, he may have orchestrated the entirety of this. That's possible. It's just the fact that, again, the word may be incorrect, but it suggests something. It says he was removed.
Right.
If he was going to depart, he would have voluntarily, taken a sabbatical, resigned, taken another gig, something. Removed doesn't sound like it was his choice. Does not sound that way. Now, again,
I agree.
Perhaps the reporting is not accurate, and I would guess that if it's not accurate, we'll get that somehow that will come out. But those two kind of things, and again, we haven't talked about it. I had an hour to kind of, as I was driving back from the airport, committing all kinds of offenses, vehicle offenses. I was reading the PR. So certainly not a thorough review, but something to be concerned about and something that needs further explanation from the company. That's for sure. Do you anything else want to add about that, JR?
No, I'll add that the only thing I'm going to add is, again, I saw the tweet. I sent it to you. I haven't had any time to think about it, to be honest with you. For the record, I didn't know that this was actually going to be a topic until I just happened to look at Twitter before I got in my car. And for all of those watching, I'm really not familiar with any of the topics tonight because the email was only sent at 8:06 p.m. while I was in my son's music concert.
Okay. I won't dispute that. I also won't dispute the fact, just so the record is complete, Your Honor, that this event tonight was started at 5:30, and I think JR's event started at 5:42. Just to be clear. But by the way, my kids were all in music when they were in that school age, and I thought it was great. So
it was a lot of fun. And for the record, and this was totally my fault. When you said you had to reschedule and asked me if Monday worked, I said yes without checking my schedule, and then
no problem. I was just I get to needle you a little bit.
I know you do, but I knew. I thought I better log on while I'm driving home because I know he's going to be talking smack about me.
Okay, so just to kind of summarize with MMAT, we'd like more information.
Yeah,
we'd like the company to explain why he left. We'd also like to, if in fact his departure was on the 10th and they waited to the 16th, I'd like an explanation of why that was done also. Those would be the two questions I think are fair questions. And depending on the answers, then we'll see beyond that. Again, because the replacement might be a great replacement. I don't know. So, and sometimes that's how it works. Right. Okay. So that's MMAT. Let's talk a little bit about, finger motion. Are you familiar with that particular stock?
A little bit.
Okay. So, I think we spoke last week. We were waiting for some kind of short BS report, right? Something. And we haven't spoken about this either. Did you saw the reference to how they characterized earnings?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I saw it. It was mid-morning till I read anything about it and saw the tweets. But yeah, it was a earnings miss.
Yeah.
Is that how they characterized it?
Well, they said the analyst consensus they missed on revenue according to the analyst consensus. Now, when I read that, I thought analyst consensus. One, I have not seen any analysts, by the way. So if there's any analyst, there might be one. And then when they put analyst consensus, there could be one guy. One guy said, one guy who works for Citadel says, yeah, they should do 100 billion this quarter, and they missed.
That's like you know, one of these reports citing the lawyer's assessment and referring to us.
Yes. Well, we'll definitely get to that. We'll get to our yes, our status. But you know, we expected that, and we expected probably more than once. The only thing that I find interesting, and I have to, because it's through Benzinga, I think, again, and
yes,
I am involved with some other people challenging the, let's say, the publishing prowess and legality of TD and Benzinga related to that first pile of crap short report.
right.
So, and you know, it was interesting. I think I could share this. So I sent out a letter to Capybara. So Capybara, for anybody out there, they did the short report on Fngr about a week ago or something. I think a week ago. And it was published by Benzinga and TD Ameritrade. And I think there's some connection between the two, is because when I sent it, I sent the correspondence to Benzinga. Benzinga sent it to TD Ameritrade. So they responded. They responded from the client advocacy department. What do you think that is, by the way? I don't know what that is.
That's a fancy way of saying their customer service department.
Yeah, I was going to say, so that's supposed to be good for me or bad for me? I couldn't figure it out.
You've got a client advocate.
Yeah, I guess. I thought, you know, the way it's described, that means that if I gave them like a situation, they would be helpful. I thought, silly me. So we got back a letter, and it talked about basically that if you made transactions based on that, they have no liability.
Right.
So since it had nothing to do with the letter I sent, I wrote back on Friday. I think Friday.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, I wrote back on Friday, and I said basically, hey, bozos, you didn't even respond to the proper letter. And because they were so incompetent in their response, even though it didn't relate to the topic, they indicated basically that part of their defense was based on the fact they didn't review the publications.
Right.
So they would receive something, they wouldn't look at it, and then they would publish it. And somehow they thought that was good. That was a good idea. I think that's not a good idea. And kind of like in my original letter, I said, I don't think I even specifically said that, but what happens, like, you know, and I didn't say this, but what, you know, with Benzinga, let's say you have, I don't even know who this person is, but there's a CEO and somebody sends a threatening letter into Benzinga about the CEO. You just publish that and without even looking at it. So it's on your site. I didn't really, one, I didn't buy that position. And two, if in fact they don't look at anything before they publish that, I don't really think that's a defensible position. So
no, I would agree. I would totally agree.
Okay.
It's almost like it just comes in and gets automatically posted to their site as news.
Yeah, and they think that somehow, I understand if it's related to, like, let's say they published that article. Yeah, actually in this situation. So let's say they published that same crappy short report, and you read that short report and then bought a bunch of Fngr motion and were upset because it dropped.
Right.
They're saying they're not responsible for your decisions. Okay, maybe, you know, because everybody makes their own decisions, certain their trading decisions.
Right.
But in this case, it's not. They're saying they don't look at it, and they have no responsibility if they defame people. So I didn't think that was an appropriate response. I sent another letter to them and we'll see what their response is. In the meantime, today in the morning, they published, well, they editorialized, I would say, on the earnings for Fngr Motion. And they characterized the revenue as a miss without really kind of giving us the background. Because again, if it's one guy, and how about if that guy works for a short? Is that really a analyst consensus? Is that really that? And you've been involved with Fngr Motion for a while. Have you seen anybody in up till today? Have you seen any analyst in any respect? And if you have, let me know. But have you seen any analyst projections about revenue?
No,
No.
I've not. The only thing that I've seen are the people talking about it on Twitter, and from both sides, both the positive and the negative. That's it. I mean, so, and maybe that's what they maybe those are the analysts they're talking about.
But even in that particular article that I'm referring to from Benzinga, they say, they miss consensus, the analyst consensus by X dollars, but they're up 83% over the same quarter last year. That's how they characterize it. So even their negative spin is a positive. Listen, if your revenue increases 83% year over year, not financial advice, that would be perceived to be good. And the other thing I was thinking is on the other, so most, and I'm certainly no stock whiz, but the two things I look for, kind of you look to see especially if it's a growth company, you're looking at revenue growth and you look at EPS. You're looking to see when they become profitable. And those really are the two things. And generally, when a company shifts from being not profitable to profitable, there is a big move. That's generally what happens. And if you look, again, not financial advice, but if you look at the numbers, they went to being basically break even in that quarter. And with basically a positive move in profitability year over year. And if I read the press release correctly, they are suggesting that they're going to become profitable. And if they broke even this quarter, then that probably likely means if they think they're going to go profitable, that'll be pretty soon. And so if in fact, and I was thinking about this, so let's say their revenues were less than the analyst consensus, then that EPS number is even more impressive because that means they were even more efficient in their business, not less. I think that would be a positive. So that I know because I saw this morning, even I was out of town, but I was still looking at X Twitter and looking at comments, and I saw people were pissed off that they thought that was a form of a short attack, just because again, it's misleading, but with some accuracy. You could, if you're carefully parsing words, it would be technically correct if there was one analyst who did that, and that was only one analyst, that would be technically correct. It would not really be transparent, but technically correct. And they covered themselves, I think, when they said the 83% increase. Yeah, but they had an 83% increase. So they would say something to the effect that kind of negated whatever doubt they put in. But I think that was pretty sleazy. And it wouldn't surprise me if TD or Benzinga has a relationship with some parties, and either they do it for financial reasons or they do it for some other reason. Any opinion?
I think the thing that I was thinking about is, how often are these organizations challenged on this kind of stuff? I mean, Fngr Motion hired Mark Bazile, so he's going to start digging into this. And I'd like to know how often broker dealers, how often companies like Benzinga are challenged on this kind of stuff. I mean, you're talking about the analysts you can't have a consensus of one analyst. That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, that defies all logic. So clearly they were trying to refer to a group of people. So if it turns out that it was one person, that to me right there alone is enough to throw the report out the door. So again, going back to these organizations aren't challenged on these types of things. They're taken as gospel. When someone sees that pop up on their app and their screen, when they're looking over their investments, and they're investing in that, they're going to read it, and what's the end result? Oh, they missed earnings expectations, and geez, the stock's going down, gone. That's the reaction that they want. So it'll be interesting to see how what Mark, and we might not know until long after they're made, but it'll be interesting to see how Mark maneuvers these two things, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and so let's go back a little bit. So during the week, we were asking for it. Honestly, we were excluded from the Magnificent 18. I'll call them the Magnificent 18. They were the 18 pumpers, promoters, allegedly, in that crappy capybara report. And we came on, I think it's a couple times now, where we wanted to be included because we felt neglected. And I thought, it was a disrespect to us that we weren't included in that group. And we had some guy during the week who called us out and said that we weren't licensed and in good standing. So just to be clear, we both are. And to the extent I'm not, some judge is going to be really pissed at me tomorrow.
Well, let's take a step back, because I was thinking about this after all that went down. A couple of things. Number one, we assume they were talking about us. Now, I'm not, when I say this, I don't say this with a certain level of arrogance or egotisticalness or anything like that. But I was thinking, I tried to think off the top of my head. Now, and I'm going to explain this because I want everybody to understand my logic. Okay, so it was the exact quote was, "You two retards," and so I thought to myself, well, he didn't name any names. I know I have never lost my law license. I know that you've never lost your law license. So, so really, I mean, let's think about this for a second, Richard, and tell me if I'm wrong. But there's really I'm going to take a step back. There's really 6 attorneys that are in these retail groups that are a little bit outspoken. Okay, I'm going to name them. There's me. There's you, right? There's Mark Bazile, Wes, Hands of Steel, and Rosa. Now, Rosa is doing her thing. She's very quiet. She's very private. So can't be her, right? Hands of Steel, he's a little outspoken. He comes on every now and again, talks about what's going on, backs off. There's 2. I gotta confess, I don't view Wes or Mark as a retard, right? And I'd be remiss to think that either one of them has ever lost their license over their entire career. So that really only leaves 2 guys, right? I mean, am I right?
Well, I had I knew that I was in good standing and practicing, because that's what I do.
Right.
We've spoken, so I presume that I have no reason to suspect anybody else, but I didn't focus on that part. I focused on the retard part. And I thought to myself, well, I'm certainly not, but JR, not so sure. Not so sure.
I just thought, I thought I kind of took a step back and was like, well,
yes, they did use that. By the way, they did use that terminology.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the specific terminology.
And it was deleted the next day.
Yeah, that was the point. That was the bigger point I was going to make.
Yeah.
We had already said that if anybody says nonsense, we're just not going to tolerate it.
Yeah.
And if that gentleman wants to engage, we prefer not to waste our time or their time. But in the future, and he deleted it, so he took care of the problem as far as I'm concerned. Sure. Whatever. We're not interested. But in the future, if that happens again, where people are putting out misinformation, listen, we're doing it. We're doing it anyway. So what? You're going to call our bluff? Like we're not following up on this stuff.
Sure.
So not meant as a threat, just meant as what we intend to do. And what was, I found,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't remember if it was last night. Was it that? It was that particular quote. Do you remember that it used the terminology we?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was a big mistake, I thought. You can't have concerted action, right? So he didn't. This gentleman didn't say I. He used the term we, which suggested that it's a group or a combination of some sort.
Right.
I think that's problematic. It's not like, I don't know what people are thinking. It's not like maybe they won't do squat, but it's not like the SEC, FINRA, and the DOJ don't know what's going on here. How could they not? Everybody's been bombarding them about this. So it takes real whatever to go public and acknowledge that you're in a conspiracy. I'm using we, just suggesting a conspiracy, but you're in some type of arrangement to make the stock go down in price.
Right.
And that was what that tweet suggested. I thought that was really problematic.
Yeah.
And, myself.
Well, I mean, for me, I mean, my whole thing is look, you and I are goofy. We try to add a little bit of humor to all this stuff. So, I've never been one to, whatever, call me a few names. I don't care. I mean, I was thinking as I was kind of processing it, I was just like, I've been called worse by my friends. So, I'm not getting upset about being name called or whatever. I could care less. But
I'm going to a poker game tonight. I'll get called worse names at the poker game.
I know. I know.
Yeah, I think it is. But our concern. Oh, I'm speaking for you. You could correct me if I'm wrong. But our concern is not our personally, whatever. We're lawyers, so people call us all kinds of names. The other side calls us all kinds of names. I end up in battles with the other attorneys constantly. So it's part of the the job. But what the part that I don't like is it impacts the value of the stock, and everybody out there who's a shareholder is impacted. And if it's because it happens, it generally does have an impact, at least for an amount of time.
Right.
And there's no justification for that.
My thing was going back to, look, I mean, I don't care. Call me whatever name you want to. But you can't put inaccurate information out there like that and expect not to be consequences. I mean, I've worked too hard to pay myself to get through college, put myself through law school. I'll be paying all my student loans until I'm 64, 65 years old. I'm required to get 12 credits every year that I have to pay for out of my pocket. Cost me $300 annually to renew my license. So don't imply or insinuate that one of us has lost our license when you don't have proof to back it up. That meets the minimum. I think it meets the minimum threshold of defamation. And I've already talked to two different lawyers about it.
Yeah, I think just to be accurate, he accused us of not being licensed and in good standing. That was the specific defamatory statement.
Right.
And obviously that's false.
Right.
So
it just is. I mean, and I was half tempted to take a picture of my law license showing the date that it was renewed, but I thought, well, this is stupid.
Let's see if I forgot. Do I have my? That's an interesting topic. Do I have my bar card on me? That'd be interesting.
Mine's upstairs.
I'm gonna see if I have it.
I just the whole thing was kind of
I do. Here's my bar card. Does that have the year? Where's the year? Well, this is it.
Yeah, mine's upstairs. I'm not going to get mine.
Yeah, but anyway, it was just the point again is we've seen how people can harm other people with those kind of fake stories, and they're always timed. It's not like they're just happen to come out at a random time. they're always well timed. They're planned out,
Sure.
and it's just not right. And again, up until now, up until these times, people bitched about him, a lot, but there weren't a lot of people that stood up to it. And again, I think that's the difference. People just aren't going to tolerate it anymore,
Right.
and they'll have to suffer the consequences.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
Hey, I got a joke, Richard. I finally got a joke.
All right, good.
What do you call a lawyer at the bottom of the ocean?
A good start.
An improvement.
Okay. All right. I was close.
That was one fix it man. One fix it man. Thank you.
Okay. I thought it was Busy Brands. And by the way, is that the dumbest name you ever heard? Busy Brands? Really? I think that should go down. I should put a double asterisk in front of him. So thank you. Thank you. Who are you talking about? The good looking studs, by the way. What are you looking at? What stream are you looking at? Anyway, I would expect in terms of somebody was asking about MMTLP. We'll address that in a second. In terms of finger motion, though, I think it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the week plays out. It'd be interesting to see how much more crap is put out to try to create confusion, to impact the price of the stock. That was interesting this morning. I watched the price action. It dipped, and then I think people or whatever were either there were people contemplating or whatever, and then it came back. I also, and I don't know if this is true, I hope somebody with a lot more knowledge can correct me, is I looked at the number of shares that were borrowed or were available to be borrowed in finger motion today, and it was 700. I think 300 once and 400 the second time. So do you have any understanding, Mr. JR, of whether that reflects the amount of shares that were sold to become available today?
I don't know.
Why don't you pretend? Just make it up.
Sure. Yes, I do. Yes, I've got this in-depth knowledge of how it all works.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask somebody who might know at some point in time, query, if there's only 700 shares to borrow and the borrowing cost, I think it's 129%. Does that suggest that a lot of people are not selling? That's my question. I happen to think that makes logical sense, or else there'd be more shares available to borrow, but I don't know. But I thought that was an interesting setup.
Well, it makes you wonder if it's hard to borrow on some of these stock loan desks. So
yeah.
I mean, I will tell you, I don't watch the price action. I just don't. I mean, I'm kind of in and out all day, checking things. I'm not one of these guys sit there and stare at my computer and watch the damn thing bounce up and down 10, 15, 20 cents either direction. I've never been like that. It's too nerve-wracking for me. So
me too. I am exactly the same way. I wait at least 85 seconds between looks. I do. Every 85 seconds. It moves like 636 to 637. It really is a lot of fun. It's I eat a bunch of popcorn and just watch. It's a great 8 hours spent, honestly. And but anyway, so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. We're expecting more garbage. We'll address it. We'll address it if we see it. Right. I'll certainly address it. And JR and I will, we're obviously invested in it, and we're interested. It's interesting to see how it's going to play out. That's all I could say.
Yeah.
MMTLP. Give me your today's spin on that.
My today's spin is still positive outlook. I mean, Drew posted he was on a Zoom call earlier today. I was on a Zoom call earlier today as well too. We have good, we've got boots on the ground. We've got people that are working behind the scenes, meeting with congressional offices. I mean, we don't talk about that kind of stuff on Spaces anymore. And I don't. And I don't think Drew does either. The one thing I noticed about Drew's post today was he didn't share what office he was on with. And that's great, because we know from past experiences, when we've got boots on the ground and they know whose doors we're knocking on, they're going in right after we do. So I don't kiss and tell who we're talking to. But we had one today that went really well. And there's a couple more already planned for the end of for later this week. So, I know it's not. I know it's not. It's not frontline news every day, but there's things going on in the background. There's plenty of people that are reaching out to Congress and talking to them. Someone just posted, "How do you know Drew isn't lying?" I don't know. I don't play those games. I take what I see verbatim. I take what I hear behind the scenes verbatim, and I know people are meeting with Congress. So, so yeah, I do. I think things are moving. Are they moving as fast as people want them to? No, I know that, but this is a process.
So usually we can foresee kind of things that are going to come up. So I do believe, and I think it should be addressed. I do believe that if someone was anti MMTLP, they would use the ouster of Palikaras as in some story related to that.
Sure.
And whoever is moving the MMTLP crowd forward, they should be prepared to address that if it's brought up, because I would expect it to be brought up.
I agree.
And yeah, so I mean, it's something that should be thought of, even if his departure is innocuous, because we've seen just like we were talking, the shorts, they will use whatever information they can
Yes.
to sort of distract and disrupt. And in this case, maybe not all Congress is on your side also.
Right.
May be the case, and maybe they'll try to jump on it. So again, I would suggest, and I support everybody in the MMTLP crowd, obviously, since we are, and I say this every week, and I mean it every week, I support everybody who's trying to move the stick forward, move the ball forward, not the stick. Who moves a stick forward, by the way? But I would be prepared for that. And because I think somebody will start raising that as an issue. Because it occurred to me. If it occurred to me, it occurred to somebody else.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I would not, I'd give it till the end of the week and we see at least one article from someplace, with a negative spin on it. The other thing I don't know if you talked, well, I know you didn't because I was listening to you, but the PR statement that came out from NextBridge on, the $7 million, that's positive as well too,
Yes.
I'm cognizant of it. We were on a Zoom call last week, and the gentleman that was on, his story touched my heart, and I wear my emotions on my sleeve. That because you hear me bitch sometimes. But his story is the same as the other 2,000-3,000 people's stories on Twitter. And, you and I have talked about this. We are emotionally invested in this. Yes, we're financially invested, but for us, it's become more emotional, and so that's, I struggle with it because sometimes the whole Twitter space, and again, this, it gets to me. I part of me wants to lose my shit. The other part of me knows I need to be treating this like a job where I maintain a certain level of professionalism. So I really struggle with it, but it's hearing stories like that always brings me back around, and it's tough when you have to talk to some of these people and you hear kind of those stories. So yeah, it's been keeping me grounded, and that's what's been keeping me moving is the folks that I'm working with. So
yeah, well, I mean, as we both know, that it was those stories from this is the early days. That's what kind of got us started, and that's why we're still here, and we kind of pledged to be here till the end, till it was resolved in some fashion, and that's where we still are. And I agree, the stories, and it's got to get worse, right? These people that have now been without any kind of finances, security, and the stress, it all sucks. It really does suck.
Yeah.
Listen, well, we all hope it plays out, plays out well. By the way, I'm going to take you back to finger motion for 1 second, just because I'd like to ask this question.
Sure.
Just like we've had like a bunch of days, because it relates back to MMTLP every time we get that at one of those days. So we get to one of those inflection days and we expect like a kaboom. And for some reason we get no kaboom. And so last night, so this is before, so you knew earnings had come out, right? And you saw the earnings and, they were positively received by most except for that analyst. Did you have any anticipation of what Fngr motion would do today?
I suspected, I don't know what, I didn't think about what the share price was going to happen with the share price, but we talked earlier last week that we were expecting more hit pieces. I mean, we talked about it. We talked about it at length. So I wasn't at all surprised kind of when it came out. And then I did check the share price and it was down. But I thought to myself, I wonder if it's going to be up by the end of the day, because that seems to be what's happening. I did not freely admit that I was busy all day. I didn't really look at the chart, so I didn't know kind of when it went, when it went down or what it did all day. But wasn't it green by the end of the day? Pretty certain it was.
Yeah, it was.
I don't know by how much. I just remember seeing it was green on the way out the door.
It's green though.
So I don't know what it did after hours either. But you and I keep having these conversations where something happens and we have an expectation, and then that expectation plays out.
Yeah.
And so, in my mind, it really is a pattern. It's a pattern, it's a playbook, and we've been talking about it basically to the T. Now, we didn't know short report was going to come out. We didn't know that was going to be the spin on earnings. That's not what we're talking about, but we can always anticipate something is going to come out.
Yeah, and it's kind of based, I'm not saying it's because everybody has a profession, right? Or whatever they do. And if you do it enough, you think you develop like an intuition, but your brain has seen something, 15,000 times. And now it can kind of figure out. Maybe you don't know it consciously, but it kind of directs you in a particular way. And so for us, that's kind of it. So a lot of times we don't say it because we don't know it for a fact, but we can kind of guess, anticipate kind of certain issues. So I certainly hope for the MMTLP crowd, again, it gets resolved quickly and easily. And just for the record, Fngr motion closed at 674 and 670 after hours. That was and the volume was an average day, so it wasn't a particularly busy day, which I also thought was kind of interesting. So that just getting back, if that short report had been really effective, so I'll take you back. That first short report, the Capybara short report, that particular day, I think it was close to 5 million shares that traded, and the stock dropped about 35% that particular day. Today, the volume was about 900,000. So whatever that twist on earnings, it had like a very short impact, and basically nobody bought and nobody sold. That's kind of like the way I see it.
Yeah.
But anyway. So two other issues I wanted to address. These were two we were going to talk about, and we haven't talked about them directly, other than that we talked about them last week. I'll refresh your memory. We talked about the new SEC regs, right?
Yeah.
The short sale, the short position, and the share lending. And if you want me to start, I'm happy to start.
Yeah, you're gonna have to start because I was reading something else yesterday.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So, I don't remember exactly when they become in effect. I remember there was quite a tail. It might have been 12 months, might have been 18 months.
Yeah.
So there's quite a tail. But there were two particular new regulations that were instituted, effective at some future point in time. And I think when I saw them, by the way, I thought in part they were, if I was going to say that MMTLP has generated anything, I would say these two regulations relate to MMTLP. They relate straight to shorting, and they relate to the share lending. So the shorting part, I think it was something on the order that that the broker or the market maker, whoever was holding the short position had to disclose it within a month, something along those lines. So I don't know how meaningful that is. I don't know, like, is in a month, have they already like gone? Has that short position been now gone? They made their money and they escaped. Do they disclose it to the public? Do they just disclose it to the SEC? Is the SEC going to enforce it? If they enforce it, is there going to be a penalty that's going to be meaningful? So to me, the first thing when I saw that, besides MMTLP, that's what the first thing that occurred to me. I wondered if it was a case of Gary Gensler and the SEC putting on a show that they were, they were going to do this. This is their action they're taking in response to all the issues about shorting. They passed these regulations. They're going to go after the bad actors. And that's the first thing that occurred to me, that it wasn't really legitimately aimed at doing what it was supposed to do. Any comment about that?
So I just pulled it up quick, and the first thing came up was Reuters, and I started reading it to kind of refresh my memory. Here's a good quote. Short interest in the U.S. market has totaled $927 billion as of Thursday, according to analytics from S3 Partners. Now, we all remember them. Quote, the practice has long been divisive, with critics accusing short sellers of trying to hurt companies and short sellers arguing they help root out fraud and corporate misconduct. If everyone in the MMTLP community knows, you can go out to FINRA and scroll through all the fines and all the violations. And one thing you'll see is there's a tremendous amount of fraud and misconduct among short sellers. We know that because it's documented, it's out there, it's public, it's reviewed for public. Mismarking shorts as longs, incorrect blue sheet date. I mean, it's just all out there. So I think
unintentional, though, I believe.
Yeah, it's always a coding error.
Yeah. Coding I think it's COATING.
I think it's laughable that these organizations, the premise of these organizations is to protect against fraud and corporate misconduct. I mean, is that what they were trying to do when they, sold short SBF, when they sold short Bear Stearns, when they sold short the airlines, after September 11th and basically all through the early 2000s? I don't think the airlines committed a fraud at that point. So this is laughable. Sorry. So it's just nonsensical.
I agree.
I will tell you, I don't know the specifics of the rule. I do know the one thing I did read was it's not effective for some time. The other thing that I'm unclear of with this rule is this information open to the public, or are they just reporting this to FINRA? Is that
exactly?
So we don't know. So and as the MMTLP community is well aware, FINRA has zero transparency. So while this is a good rule in practice, or in theory, in practice, it's meaningless. It's got no teeth. If this information isn't available to the public, which it should be, because retail should be able to hold short sellers to help root out fraud among short sellers and short selling misconduct. I mean, it should work both ways, right? So, but this data is not going to be available because FINRA is not transparent, and we know that. So, if FINRA really wanted to help the markets and root out fraud and misconduct, we would have access to this information on a regular basis.
Yeah, it should be, in my opinion, it should be available daily. At the end of the trade, yeah, it's electronic information. It's available. It's not like it's not available. There's no good reason not to disclose that information.
Exactly.
There's nothing. There's no reason. Unless they don't want to.
Right.
That's it.
They can hide their fraud and misconduct, whereas they can hide the fact that they're helping us and protecting us from corporate misconduct.
And so the second aspect, again, also designed apparently to by the way, Reg Show was designed to stop shorting, right? Like in 2005, 2006, whatever. And obviously that did the trick. So again, that's why I'm less impressed until we see what happens.
Right.
If they don't enforce it and there's no penalties, and this is nonsense, whatever.
Right.
So the other one that they passed that again will be effective somewhere down the road is regarding share lending, and they had to disclose whenever they did that. I think either within 15 minutes or the end of the day. I didn't remember how it ended up, but basically in a daily fashion. Okay, so they do, and the problem with so let's go back, and we did a video. We talked about the share lending. The problem with the share lending is that it encourages shorting because those lenders. We'll give you the example: finger motion. The lending rate is 120. Well, I saw somebody say 166%.
Yeah.
But let's say it's 130%. And let's say Fidelity, just as as one. Let's say they're paying those people that are lending their shares. Let's say they're paying them 25%, which would be a pretty good return, I would think. That means Fidelity is making 125% on those share lending, which would encourage them to do that, I would think, because that's the most profitable element they have. So now this new regulation requires them to disclose that act, and their concern from that is it might disclose positions and some nonsense, honestly. But the question is, again, what happens if they don't? We saw like the failures to deliver, right? What's the ramification and penalty for that? As far as I could tell, there is none. It exists. It happens. It's a naughty. It's a big naughty, but no ramifications.
Right.
So here, the same thing. What do we know? They have some disclosure requirement. Okay. And if a bunch of people don't comply, what are you going to do? And the other part is, if it's not going to be in effect for a year and a half, and let's say they'll warn people for a while, maybe they'll say new regulations, so just don't let it happen again, or we'll have to. And then let's say they try to enforce it. That's like 3 or 4 years down the road. I don't even think Gensler is in the office anymore. I really don't. I think he's gone by then. And it may be a way of pushing off the subject matter.
Right. Well, a number of years ago, and this is going back a ways, there was a huge overhaul of qualified and non-qualified.
This is for you. Plans. This is for you, by the way.
What is? Phillies. Oh yeah, they are winning. There was a huge overhaul of qualified and non-qualified plans, and there was a requirement. There was a fee disclosure requirement. And when I say fee disclosure, I mean, when you invest in a fund, in a 401k or retirement plan, ETF or mutual fund, there's a fee that's associated with it. And all the broker dealers that had qualified and non-qualified employee retirement plans hey man, come on, I didn't do anything. At any rate, they were required to have fee disclosure on an annual basis. And so I thought to myself, as I was kind of processing the share lending that we were talking about last week, that they should be required to disclose the earnings, the share lending, the entire share lending program. So if you allow shares to be lent that you've purchased, and let's just say, for example, let's use the Jigger Shop stock, because I don't like to pick on any particular ticker. We use the stock that was issued by the Jigger Shop, which is an ice cream down the street, and you bought that in your brokerage account, and you decide to lend out those shares. You're only seeing the earning that you're making. You're not seeing the earning that the broker dealer is making. That piece of it should be required to be disclosed. They should be required to disclose the entire fee that they're lending those shares out, because I can sure shit imagine that if people knew what these organizations were making when they were lending your shares out, that you'd probably think otherwise. The other thing they should be required to do is some type of disclosure. If you enter into the share lending program, it needs to be explained to you what a share lending program is and what the purpose of it is. Because if you think about it, if you want to look at these broker dealers like I do, and I know this is not the law, but this is how they should be viewed as a fiduciary, they shouldn't have a share lending program, because if they're looked at as a fiduciary, they've got a responsibility to you. And so it's counterintuitive to be lending your shares out of your account to an organization that's going to turn around and sell them short back into the market. You're basically betting against yourself. So there's a lot of these little changes that if they went into effect, they'd probably have a significant impact.
Yeah, I looked through my like 840-page customer agreement with Fidelity. It's
You probably looked at
relevant.
it like 5 times.
Yeah. So since it's relevant, obviously, in the case, and I tried to find a disclosure relating to the share lending program that really was complete and addressed the conflict of interest, that you're diluting my interest, all that stuff. It doesn't appear anywhere.
No.
Yeah. And, again, they probably haven't been challenged on it, and until they're forced to, they're not going to do it.
That's right. It's probably not required anywhere, to be honest.
It's not, but it's certainly deceptive. It certainly is deceptive. And obviously it's going to be, I'm not hiding anything since I raised it already. It's an issue that's raised in my arbitration amongst a billion other issues. But yeah, before you're killing yourself, they probably should tell you that, right? They probably should tell you you're going to bankrupt yourself by letting us lend your shares. We'll give you $2 here, but we're going to take $10 over here. Yeah, really, it's distressing. I was going to say, on top of that, companies like Fidelity, because I like to go back to Fidelity, it's a private company. So maybe some other company, at least you'd have a financial statement where you could at least figure something out. But Fidelity doesn't have to give that to you. It's just a private company. They give it to their accountant, whatever. And, when they have to file returns, etc. But it's not publicly available. And we don't know what kind of nonsense goes on. And again, I repeat, Fidelity's ownership, private family, amongst the richest families in the country, in the multi-billions of dollars. So, I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
How's that?
That's
better?
That's really why I love these live streams. I don't know what else to say.
That's kind of a cheap, just to let you know, Busy Brands. That's kind of a cheap hat, isn't it?
Just to let you know.
But thank you so much, Busy Brands.
The whole thing. I think there's a lot of little things they could do that would shift behavior significantly. Yeah. I tend to take a minimalist approach. You don't need to overhaul the whole market. Make these organizations disclose certain information. Make these organizations look at your account as they should be treating it like a fiduciary. They have a fiduciary responsibility to not protect my assets, but not to be doing things that are in conflict with me making money, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. They should be operating in good faith. They're not.
Exactly.
They're operating for their own benefit, and with no regard for, not only no regard, but no disclosure to their customers. It really is set up in balance. Right. And of course, I would like just have shorts settle like longs, right? 2 days to settle, 2 days to settle.
Yeah,
we're done. There's nothing wrong with shorting. Go short, just cover in 2 days, and we're fine. We're done. I mean, that's a solution. They're never going to, they're not going to do that in the near term. No. Maybe, hopefully, at some point in time. I kind of want to tie in one more thing we're going to talk about is, and it's funny. I raised it as in the past, Cassava Sciences. I said they had a short report. If you remember, it was like an Alzheimer's drug. So they had another one that came out, which I found interesting. So it related to a doctor. I'm going to try to put this in a short little context because it's interesting and it's still not right. But in essence, it related to, they were trying to confirm certain information from a doctor that was affiliated with the City College of New York, because they had been involved in some kind of program with patients and testing in certain phases. So one of those doctors from there has a problem. Apparently, when they were trying to get the information, the specific information, he wouldn't make it available. He said it had been lost. Okay, maybe. They didn't contest the validity of the information, but because he had lost and didn't make the information available, they questioned his practices and therefore drew from that there was no validity in the drug. And this is, I think, today, by the way. And this particular doctor worked with, let's say, the chief doctor of the company. So it sounds, by the way, like, okay, it's something interesting to follow. But what I was concerned about was that this report that's not out yet, was leaked. It was leaked in, so I can't imagine who might leak it. And before it was leaked, there was something like a 40 or 50% increase in the shorting of the stock, which suggests that somebody knew something inside. So we always talk about, manipulation, but how about insider trading? To me, if they knew that a report was coming out, so I'm not even addressing the report and the accuracy of the report. I'm just saying that even if that's true, there should have been no shorting of the stock before the report was released. And if that's the case, then obviously the DOJ should be going after those people.
Right.
And I think what happened, and I'm not certain, but there's a company called Palantir. Palantir is a data software company, data collection software company. One of the things it has, I believe, is it has a insider trading platform that is used by the US government. So I believe that the SEC uses Palantir to figure out when there's insider trading. So it looks at a bunch of transactions and it does its thing. And based on how the transactions and where they came, it then concludes that maybe those are suspicious transactions that need to be looked at. And Palantir is good at looking at, this is kind of where I'm going. Palantir is really good at looking at huge amounts of information and then kind of categorizing it for you. So putting it into piles that are useful.
Right.
And I was thinking about, when we're looking at naked shorting and where everything is going, if we had like a comprehensive software system that would permit us to throw the information, and I know there's share intel, but I get the feeling that share intel doesn't do it like I'm saying. If you could have a program that would basically sift through all the transactions, gargantuan amounts of information, and then mark the suspicious transactions, I think that's doable. I really do. And I think the SEC should be pressured to pursue that kind of software. If they pursued insider trading software, there's no reason they should not pursue software that reflects manipulative trading practices.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot more they could do. I mean, if they really wanted to, they could be sitting behind their desk pulling blue sheets on every ticker that, is suspected to be heavily naked shorted. I mean, the bottom line is, and we've talked about this, and these communities know this, and insert whatever ticker. The regulators are not doing their job. For whatever reason, they're not doing their job. Are they corrupt? I don't know. Are they lazy? I don't know. Are they inept? I don't know. But they're not doing their job, because some of this stuff look, us two retards talk about this every week. Some of this stuff is not rocket science. It's not.
Yeah.
So what's going on?
Again, I know Ham referenced this, but I'm very sympathetic to those all biomeds that try to make a go of it.
Sure.
And that are interfered with, because maybe it's not this one, but out of the hundreds and thousands of companies that have gotten knocked out of, existence, there's probably some in there that would have provided, valuable remedies and relief to people out there. And it's a sad state of affairs, really.
Right. Yeah. Right. If you're worried about, if you think about it, these are the companies. I mean, let's think about theoretically the way it's supposed to work. Our country is built on innovation. Our country is built on hard work. Our country is built on moving things forward. if you want organizations to do those things, real organizations, whether it's a company like Meta or whether it's a company like this Sava, which I know nothing about. But if you want these companies to be successful, you have to be monitoring what's going on from the other side of the coin with short selling, because at the end of the day, these companies, these hedge funds and short sellers are driving good companies out of business under the premise that they're here to protect the market, when in reality, what they're doing is they're hurting innovation and they're killing jobs. It's the bottom line.
Okay.
So if you want our country to grow from the ground up, this aspect of the market has to be corrected, because what's going to happen is, and go back to everything we've talked about. Let's use MMTLP and NextBridge as the perfect example. And look, you can see it. The proof is in the pudding. I don't believe that Greg McCabe is ever going to take NextBridge public. I don't believe it's ever going to happen. I don't think he's ever going to say, we're getting a QSIP, we're going to openly trade NextBridge hydrocarbon shares, because he knows what's going to happen. He knows his company is going to be drowned, hammered, shorted to death. And at some point, he'll be like every other company that goes through that. So that means he can't go out to the market to get funds to do what he needs to do. He's got to find a creative way, which is exactly what they just did. They got these 25 participation agreements. They got $7 million to go drill some holes. They found a unique way to kind of pay these guys back. You're going to start to see more companies doing. I'll use Vocal as another example. Vocal's already actively trading, so Jeremy Farmer has a whole other host of problems with that. But look what he did. He went and he applied and is using regulation CF, regulation crowdfunding, to raise money. So you're going to start to see more and more mid-cap, small-cap companies do those kind of things instead of going out into the market to raise funds, because they know what's going to happen.
Okay. I'm going to quickly answer a question. Somebody asked about GTII. That person asked about GTII. I think their brief is due within the next 10 days. Their brief. FINRA's brief is due in about 10 days. And that
means you have to do it, right? That means you have to say a joke.
Oh, I was going to anyway. I had one lined up already, but
he just paid for something that you were already going to do. Good job.
I was going to do it anyway. But anyway, we'll certainly report when GTII, when FINRA files a brief. That'll be in the appeal against Alpine, and we'll see. It may be, if I thought about this, if their brief is strong, it might have an impact on the share price. It's possible. I don't know. Well, we'll wait and see. By the way, bakers trade their recipes on a need-to-know basis.
You just paid $5 for that crap.
That was $5, Busy. $5. $5. I think that one's worth like $25, just to be clear. So it'll be interesting to see how Sava plays out, because Sava Sciences, I feel bad for that. And again, it's sad if cures are impacted because somebody wants to make an extra buck, doesn't care about their own family. I'm anti that.
Well, I mean, how can you not be? Yeah. It's just, again, it's counterintuitive to what our country was founded on: innovation, hard work. It's just it's ass backwards.
So, since we're about at the end, so we're going.
You just got another one. What is wrong with you people?
Oh my Lord. I'm summarizing. So MMAT, that was an interesting change in leadership. We have to see how that plays out. Fngr motion, all the negative short reports, we expect more. We don't think they're substantial. And so far, they haven't been, I don't think they're accurate, or they at least require more explanation. MMTLP, things are working forward. People are still working hard. Hopefully that will work out. We talked about the SEC's new regulations. And again, I think it ultimately depends on enforcement and penalties. We talked about short reports. We talked about cassava science is and the fact that the shorts preceded a leaked report. And I think that's about it.
Yeah.
All right. For all you
owe another joke.
Do I?
Josh. Yeah, Josh.
Okay. Here's the joke. JR.
Yes.
That was the joke.
You paid $10 for that, man.
10 imaginary bucks. I still haven't figured what happens when they do that, by the way. So
I have no idea.
between you and I,
know, man.
I think it's just like, I think it's just promotion, their promotion. Anyway, I thank everybody out there who listened. If things this is where I started. If JR was actually listening, if things happen during the week that require immediate attention, we will certainly come and do a live stream. Just like it just happened that like the MMAT thing happened to fall tonight. We didn't know that, but we will certainly come and if anything happens, if Fngr runs, like I promised, there might be a live stream of champagne and donuts. We'll see that. And hopefully we will get what's wrong with that?
Champagne and donut. Well, I guess it would depend if it's a rosé.
Okay. I just think a good champagne, the donuts will work. But we'll certainly kind of come back and bring you up to speed. Anyway, thank everybody who kind of hung out. Thank everybody who asked questions. And after this is posted, if you have additional questions, I look at all of them. And if you have a question, I will respond. So everybody have a great night. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and be well. Hopefully everybody will have a great week, and take care, everybody.
Yep. Everybody have a good night.